Hey everybody, this is Jason over at Paydirt DFS, and I wanted to create this video to continue our lineup building series for NFL. We just covered cash games. Now we are going to dive into single entry, small field, 3 entry max strategy and how you build it using the tools and the solver optimizer. So first things first, I'm going to be using the SPY $100 555 entry contest as the sample to use today. I'm going to go over just to look at what you're going to look at in the sheets, the contest sims, the pivot finder, and also then the optimizer. So first things first, you want to get a look at team totals. You want to take a look at stacks. You'll see Buffalo, Miami, Houston, Cincinnati, Chicago, Seattle, Tampa Bay, Jacksonville, LAC, Indiana, Indianapolis all have the highest team totals. You also then want to take a look at this 60x percentage, 60 plus percentage here. You'll see Minnesota is a great value, followed by Miami, most likely to do it. Dallas, another Minnesota, Houston. What's interesting is Minnesota here is the cheapest. When you look at the overall range of outcomes, QB, RB, wide receiver, tight end, I want to look at the ceiling for each, and then I want to look at specifically for quarterbacks. I want to look at their, basically how they are compared to each other, but they do have a 20 plus percentage point here. This marker, if they're going to go 20 points, score 20 points or more, there's 2x, but quarterbacks score points fairly easily, so this is not as valuable. 3x could be pretty valuable depending on if you are going to use a value stack, and also 4x, not really as much. But when I look here and I sort by ceiling, I see Josh Allen, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Trevor Lawrence, Dak Prescott. So while Josh Allen has the highest ceiling by far, he's also the most expensive by far. So I got a feeling as we go through this, we're going to see that we probably shouldn't be paying up for quarterback. Running backs, sort by ceiling. Here, you're going to see it's Bijan, James Cook, Taylor, Etienne, Kamara, Rashad White. For running backs, I like to look at the 20 plus percentage. I like to look at the 2x, and I like to look at the 3x. And also, I'll take a gander at ownership. But when I sort by 3x, the highest price running back, Bijan Robinson, most likely to 3x his salary. That's pretty good. Stick with that, followed by James Cook, Rashad White, and James Conner. One thing I will note here, Bijan Robinson has a median of 18.8. James Cook has one of 16.5. For an $800 difference, that's really not terrible. And also, Bijan Robinson has a higher ceiling than Jonathan Taylor and will be slightly less owned. Sort of by ownership, you're going to see a lot of Cook, Achane, Mostert, Mixon, Rashad White, Etienne, all with notable ownership. Wide receiver, sort by ceiling, it's Tyreek Hill, it's Justin Jefferson, it's CeeDee Lamb, Devontae Adams, Malik Neighbors. That's very interesting. Pittman, Nico Collins, and Jamar Chase. When I look at wide receivers, I want to look at the 20 plus percentage. Just because your wide receivers are your home run hitters, similar to baseball, they have a floor of 0. They do need somebody to throw them the ball in order to accrue fantasy points. So usually when it comes to high-owned wide receivers, you want to try to pivot when you can. I also want to make note here, too, that this is not indicative of what he's going to be in a small field contest. Tyreek Hill showing 13% here. He's probably going to be closer to like 30 in small field contests. It's just this is going to be him across all contests. Nico Collins, Keenan Allen, Tank Dell. So Houston stacks are going to be very popular in general. You can see Chicago stacks are going to be popular because everybody wants to fucking play Caleb Williams. But what's interesting here is that these ownerships, you really need to look at how it's going to translate to your contest. Nico Collins, I think, is probably going to be closer to like high teens, low 20s in small field. Same thing with Keenan Allen, Tank Dell. So that's a way to look at that. When I sort by median, you're going to see that Malik Neighbors pretty high up there. This is interesting, though. Justin Jefferson, very similar projection to Tyreek Hill in all facets, and he's a little cheaper, and he's going to be 4% owned compared to 13 collectively. Already Justin Jefferson seems like a good pivot. But if I had to break this down at quarterback, we're probably going to be paying down or like low 6s. Running back, I'm assuming we're going to be mid 6s to high. I don't think we're going to punt their running back. And wide receiver, you're probably going to see some combination of a high owned with the high dollar with value. Especially with wide receivers, you typically want to get somebody at a higher salary if you can, because they, as I mentioned before, they are the home run hitters. So it's interesting to note. Tight end, You don't want to allocate a lot of salary to tight end unless you actually absolutely have to. If they're in a stack, that's fine. But as you can see here, Kyle Pitts 4,600, $1,500 less, and has a 2 point projection. That's 2 point projection lower than Trey McBride, 4 points lower than McBride in the ceiling. So maybe that's something to consider. But with Trey McBride here, you're really assuming that you know if you're playing Trey McBride in this range, you're saying that he's going to outscore every single other tight end. And as you can see here, Evan Ingram projects very similarly, and he's cheaper. Njoku, cheaper. Jake Ferguson, cheaper. 6,100, though, is pretty damn good. When I sort by 20x percentage, Trey McBride, Evan Ingram, 2x, you have Theo Johnson if you want to punt, Kyle Pitts, Hunter Henry, and 4x there. Ownership is going to be Ingram, Kincaid, and McBride's actually going to be down here because no one's going to want to pay up. So that's interesting to note. When I go to the contest sims, so I already just ran these, and just so everybody knows, I ran them on small field and very small field contests usually are anywhere from 0 to 500, 600 people. NFL's a little different because most of the contests are really gigantic. Medium would be anything from 650 to 1,000, maybe 1,200. And this is just my opinion. Everybody has a different take. And then 1,300 and above would be anything I consider large field. So the higher dollar you play, the sharper the contest field you want to use. Anything above a $50 entry, I consider sharp. Me average, I'll consider anything like 12, 15 to about 50, and then not varies anything from a free game 25 cents up to $12. I use that $12 single entry as a pretty big barometer. So when I ran this, you'll see that exposure is giving me a lot of James Cook, a lot of Addison, Darnold, Rashad White. So right away, we're probably thinking we're going to see a Minnesota stack. Quarterback, yep, Sam Darnold, Gardner Minshew, then followed by Trevor Lawrence, Geno Smith, Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield. It's insinuating you want to pay down for your quarterback, meaning you're going to want to stack, have a lower cost stack. Running back, it's saying you want to pay in the mid-range or even up for running back. Very interesting. Also to note here, Bijan Robinson doesn't even show up, so I think he could be an awesome tournament play if you want to go there. Wide receivers, yep, Jordan Addison, Adunze, Justin Jefferson is up here as well. In Jigba, Christian Kirk, Tyreek Hill, Jefferson Pittman, Curtis Samuel. So this is already telling you want to mix in, just as we thought, a high dollar receiver with value. At tight end, yep, Kyle Pitts. It's telling you Jonnu Smith you can play, Cade Otton. This is fine. I just wouldn't allocate a lot of salary here unless you feel like you need to. Evan Ingram is going to be chalky, and that's okay. 13% in general is pretty damn good. Trey McBride up there too, so maybe you do want to pay up. We'll see. Flex exposures, Isaiah McKenzie. It's going to want to usually throw in some wide receiver value here. You see Neighbors, Johnson, Addison. When I go to the optimizer for the solver, so the thing with the solver, everyone has to understand and learn. This is something I just found out not too long ago. These settings here, QB stack, pass catcher, you want to avoid your opposing defense, obviously, unless you're on a really small slate. Maximize your salary cap because you could probably upgrade. Game stack, that's if you want to have somebody in that realm with you as well from the same environment. For this purpose, we're going to put that on. You don't need to do that. Avoid tight end and flex. I'm going to avoid a tight end and flex probably until like week 8, week 9. DraftKings pricing starts to get very strict as the weeks go on. So we want to capitalize while we can now. I don't think you need to include a tight end. The other thing you need to do is when you set your stacks. So I'm going just off what the contest sims gave. You could do stack QB with at least one of this or this. You could exclude a team also if you don't want to have somebody come from that realm. You can set your salary cap here, your unique players, your max lineup ownership, max player exposure. Here I'm going to set my quarterback to 50 because I want to see in 100 lineups who it really wants me to play. Max players versus defense, variance, minimum lineup projection. For this purpose, though, I'm going to want to just isolate alone. Let's isolate the two best ones he gave us, Vegas and Minnesota. You have to go in and manually adjust the quarterbacks that you want in your pool. If you leave the quarterbacks in your pool, even if you designate that you only want stacks of these teams, they will not give them to you. You have to go in and manually do that. So for small field, I like to run first on projected ownership with these quarterbacks because I want to see if I'm playing the most chalk, what that's going to look like. Like chalky builds first. Gardner Minshew and Devontae Adams is a very, very low-owned stack. You can see it's going to pile in some ownership around it. So if I'm sorted by ownership, it's going to give me all the Najee Harris. It's going to give me all the Rachaad White, Javonte Williams, Zamir White. I'm probably getting him in a few different builds. I don't know why he's stacked here with Minshew because I did not say I wanted that. Yep, so you can set other restrictions and rules here too, but for the purpose of demonstrating what it wants to force in, when you run by ownership, CeeDee Lamb, Godwin, Pittman, Waddle, Adams, Addison, some of these guys didn't even really pop too when we were looking at some of these other ones, right? So tight end Ferguson, wants a lot of because of the ownership. Now, what if I ran on projected ceiling and value? Because typically you don't need to have a super, super low-owned lineup to win in daily fantasy in a small field contest. You'll see here it's giving me a lot of Johnny Munt. It's giving me a lot of it's giving me a ton of Johnny Munt with Sam Darnold. That's actually kind of hysterical. But I really want to use this to try and see who it's forcing in with a lot of my plays. So here it's forcing in Rachaad White. Probably is going to be the highest owned running back. Yep, Rachaad White, DeAndre Swift, Alvin Kamara, ETN, Chuba Hubbard, James Conner. So right away, the one thing I want to do is I want to go here and let's start with the Minnesota one so I can show you exactly how I would do it. If I have Minnesota here, look, if you're playing Minnesota and you're not playing Justin Jefferson, then I don't know, maybe you should take up a different hobby. But Jordan Addison here, we're going to leave that. I want to now see if there's a pivot off of Rachaad White. He has popped, in the models. He's showing up a lot in the sheets. He's showing up in runs that we do. So let me see if there's another pivot just at running back that I could find for Rachaad White. So right away, you're seeing James Conner is a pretty viable pivot to Rachaad White. He's going to be half his own. You have Joe Mixon here. Yup. Aaron Jones. Joe Mixon's more expensive. Aaron Jones more expensive, and you're stacking Minnesota. You probably don't want that. Raheem Mostert. So this is interesting. Let's go take a look now. Putting him in, Rachaad White. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this filter off completely. I'm going to do max 100. And then I want to run... We'll do 60, 60, 60. I want to see who it's going to give me most of here in all of these builds, but I want to leave 100% for Sam Darnold. We're going to isolate him first. We're going to put in Justin Jefferson with him. And, we'll do the double stack examples for today. We can go to Jordan Addison. And we'll put in Rachaad White. See what that gives us. Forcing a triple stack here. That's pretty funny. Jefferson, Addison, White likes Kate Otten, likes Drake London. Who is being forced in the most here? DeAndre Swift getting paired a lot. Ken Walker getting paired a lot. Chuba Hubbard. Ken Walker, low owned 6,100. I kind of like that. We did like James Conner a lot too. But in all these lineups that have Rachaad White, it's actually telling you that you should not really pay up more at running back. So let's throw Ken Walker in there just for argument's sake. Now let's see tight ends, and let's see who's getting forced in there. Jefferson Addison, Josh Palmer. That makes sense. Drake London. Yeah, higher owned. T. Higgins, Chris Godwin. We already have Rachaad White, so we probably don't want Godwin in there. Christian Kirk, DJ Moore, Ladd McConkey. Let's throw in Christian Kirk. Now for tight end, gave me a lot of Evan Ingram, a lot of Kate Otten. It gave me more Evan Ingram than Kate Otten. So more Evan Ingram than Christian Kirk. So let's play Evan Ingram actually here. So now we have a wide receiver, a flex, and a defense. Wide receiver gave me a lot of Joshua Palmer, Higgins, Ladd McConkey, DeAndre Hopkins, some Darnell Mooney. Let's throw in some Josh Palmer here. Defense, just go and punt to the bottom and see what you can get from it. 5,600 left here. Probably gets you. Can we get Malik Neighbors? Nope, too expensive, 5,900. So we're looking for somebody 5,600. You typically want a wide receiver. A running back is fine too, but wide receivers, again, are your home run hitters. So I'm going to go use Cortland Sutton as the person we're going to try and find a pivot off of, because he's in that salary range. We'll do QB, wide receiver. We're going to simulate the appropriate pivots. All right, so sorting by salary, we can only go 5,600 or below. So here, Cortland Sutton's the best at 5,600. No ownership, so he's a fine play. Christian Kirk, we already have Evan Ingram, Tank Dell. Maybe you want to do that. Don't love his 2x maybe. Not really that great. Deontay Johnson, Jordan Addison. Deontay Johnson looks pretty sick, honestly. He has a better projection than anybody in this range. So we're going to throw in Deontay Johnson, but we're going to move him here, and we'll put Palmer in the flex because his game starts later. Deontay Johnson, 300 more. The Panthers are probably the chalkiest defense. Yep, 22% because they're at the bottom. We could just move off them and just pick anybody. If you're going to spend any time on defense, don't. But if you are going to spend time on it, I would go and pick any team that is going up against an offense that will let up a lot of pressures to the quarterback. So that's what you maybe want to do. Here, maybe we'll do the Patriots just for shits and gigs. So this could be a pretty good small entry lineup. You have a very low owned stack. You have a very chalky running back, a pretty chalky tight end, a pretty chalky value. And if you even want to keep the chalk defense, that's fine, but that's how you would build that. Let's do Vegas now, just because we were looking at Vegas as well as the other team that popped in the Sims. Go to Vegas. We're going to lock in Gardner Minshew. Obviously, you're going to go lock in Devontae Adams, and we will go from there. I'm going to remove Zamir White from this just because I don't want him to show up in any lineups with this stack. Let's set it. Let's run. Rashad White popping a lot again. DeAndre Swift, Ken Walker, Alvin Kamara making a little bit more of an appearance here. You have some Ramondre. So you know what? Let's just follow it, right? We'll do, for this argument's sake, you have Vegas. You're going to go Gardner Minshew with Devontae Adams. We're going to go Rashad White. Leave DeAndre Swift in there. Seems to be a pretty good pairing. You know what? Fuck him. I like Ken Walker instead. Ken Walker. Now we start to see what wide receivers. Yep. T. Higgins, Josh Palmer, Drake London, Chris Godwin. It's giving you a natural bring back here. And Josh Palmer and Ladd McConkey is people you maybe want to consider. So let's go to Josh Palmer. We'll throw him in there as the bring back. It's not really playing too many double stacks, which I find interesting, because if I did want to play a double stack, I could go Jacoby Myers here also, and then you can go and get a very high projected wide receiver for his salary in Malik Neighbors. Tight end, you want to pay up for Trey McBride? Fine, do that. Gets you one of these low price defenses. That's fine. If you want to play maybe Evan Ingram again. Yep, that gets you off a chalk defense and maybe onto the Bills, who are going up against Arizona. So that's how you would build small field single entry lineups. Here too, with this one, you have a very low owned stack in Minshew, Adams, with the bring back in Palmer. I double stacked it with Myers, chalky tight end, chalky running back, And this defense is probably going to be a little chalkier than you would think, just because they're Buffalo at home and they have a bad team coming in Arizona. But that's ultimately how you would build small field single entry. If you wanted to use a different team that popped in the Sims, so maybe you wanted to use Trevor Lawrence, Geno Smith. Let's use Trevor Lawrence really quick. Trevor Lawrence, we're going to lock him in. And just for argument's sake, we'll lock in Kirk and Ingram. I'm not saying you should definitely do this. I'm just trying to demonstrate the point. So right away, lower own stack again with Jacksonville. Different pricing too. You know, they're a little bit more expensive at quarterback with Trevor Lawrence. Running back here again. You know, a lot more DeAndre Swift than White. That's interesting. Actually, he took the lead back. A little bit more Alvin Kamara. This one, maybe you wanted to go with, you wanted to go Trevor Lawrence. You wanted to go Christian Kirk. You wanted to go Evan Ingram. I'm hoping we see a little bit more Tyreek here because that would make sense. Actually, no, more Jalen Waddle. So it's even telling you like Tyreek Hill is pretty expensive in this stack. But let's throw him in there. For running backs, we'll do the Rachaad White show again. We'll throw Ken Walker in there again. So now we really need to dumpster dive for some value. Who are the wide receivers that it's been forcing in? You have Ladd McConkey, Darnell Mooney, but it really doesn't want you to pay down at wide receiver more mid-range. So for this one, if I'm building this way, I'm probably taking Tyreek Hill out. And then I'm probably going to go Waddle. You could go Ladd McConkey. We'll add the lowest price defense in just to see what ceiling, what's the best player we can get if we punt everything. You can go to the overall range of outcomes here. I like to take the quarterbacks out of it just because you cannot play more than one quarterback. So I have 7,000 left. So starting from here, Nico Collins, James Cook, Keenan Allen, Pittman. Honestly, James Cook is probably a pretty good player you want, in a high total game. So we'll throw James Cook in there. And the defense, you just can't play Cardinals because you have Buffalo. Play the fucking Commanders or Panthers. Who cares? So that's how you would build some single entries. If you wanted to go one wide receiver, one pass catching option, you can. I think that may be pretty viable in Lawrence stacks. But yeah, that's how you build. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. And please join us in our next installment of this series for GPP and MEE building. Be happy to walk everybody through that. And also, starting this Friday, please check out our new weekly football show called The Bakery, where we're going to be going over some of the top stacks of the week, what we're going to do, how we're going to approach it. And it's going to be good. It's going to be informative. And I think, it's going to help people win a lot of money this year. All right, guys, thank you so much. And see you next time.